Welcome back to our E450 series. Today in part 3, we're going to continue our road performance assessment on this coach. Last week we took it on the test drive. Now we're going to get it into the shop. We're going to weigh it on all 4 corners. We're going to put it through a 50-point inspection and see just what exactly we have to work with on the chassis of this coach. All right, now that we're in the shop, we got the coach weighed on all 4 corners. We did do a shakedown on the steering. Let's start, though, doing basically a walkthrough front to back and following through our RPA inspection process. So we'll get down in the pit under the front of the coach. So the first thing that we checked is the steering. So we got our steering gear here, and we'll show you a cut. We did actually notice some side play in the sector shaft on this steering gear. We're going to try adjusting it a little tighter. I am kind of concerned that we may actually have to look at getting a rebuilt unit to fully take care of that play. Again, because the steering was pulling to the left so bad as I was driving it, I can't really say how much that play affects the drivability of the coach. So once we get that pull taken care of, then we'll drive it again and we'll see how much of an issue that is. But so just an overview of the front end of this coach. This is the twin I-beam Ford suspension. So this basic design has been around since, the 60s. Ford has made some improvements to it, but its main limitations are still there. So it is a very strong design. You can see what's unique about it. It is independent, but it's not your typical short, long arm suspension with upper and lower control arms. Instead, you've got these I-beams. So this is your pivot point here for your right front wheel. So you've got this I-beam arm that comes all the way over, and your wheel, your suspension travel pivots on that point. And for your left front, your driver's side, it's right here. So what that means is that you do get some camber change through the arc of that travel. So you do see a little more tire wear. Also, the way your steering linkage is, it's not all pivoting at exactly the same point. You've got, Ford calls it basically your right tie rod and your left tie rod. So your right side inner tie rod connects to your pitman arm here, and then your left side inner tie rod connects to the right tie rod here, goes over to your left outer and then your right outer tie rods. And so what this means, just because of the kind of strange setup of that linkage, is that you do get some bump steer in the steering. Now, we did note that while we were driving the coach, that when you're going over a lot of bumps, you're getting a lot of travel in the suspension, the steering wheel kind of wants to do this, wants to walk around in your hands a little bit. And there are things that we can do to help that, which we will get to in future videos. Some of that is basic nature of the beast. But yeah, that linkage is a bit of a limitation of the front of this coach. Also, you do get a lot of movement at on these I-beam bushing. So as you're rocking the wheel, even on a relatively new coach, you get a fair amount of side-to-side play on those. And that just translates to just more play, more vagueness in the steering. So E450 steering, twin I-beam, is not the most precise steering setup. There is, however, a lot that we can do to help it. Not to mention just getting it properly aligned, which that'll be one of the next things that we do. We did also inspect the tires. So we jacked up the front of the coach. We spun the tires, checked for runout. This right front did have a pretty good little hop to it. Kind of wondering if that may be contributing to our vibration that we're feeling, because we did get a definite vibration there. We're also wondering if our left-hand drift may be related to the tires as well. So I think before we align it, we're probably going to start just by swapping tires side to side and see if that makes any difference. It's a quick, easy check. If that doesn't make any difference, then we'll either leave them or put them back, and then we'll get it properly aligned after that, which, remember, like and subscribe so you see that alignment in a future video. You do have your factory steering damper, so this isn't doing a whole lot other than it is helping to cut down on that bump steer a little bit. It does help to take out shimmy from, if you were to get any kind of shimmy happening. We can definitely replace that with a much better unit. The Safety Plus steering control, we'll talk about that in a future video as well, is a really nice upgrade for these. Our factory front sway bar, pretty small. You can see we've got a little bit of movement in that bushing, actually. So over time, these bushings compress. So that is limiting the effectiveness of this front anti-sway bar. And you can kind of see that on both sides. So you could replace the bushings. What we're eventually going to do on this, though, is actually upgrade this to a bigger anti-sway bar. Again, future video. Before we move on, I did want to add one thing up front. So I mentioned jacking it up, checking the ball joints, wheel bearings, tires, and all that. I did just want to show you guys. So as we spin the tire here, this way you can actually see what we're looking for. So you can see there's a little sudden hop in the tire. They're never going to be perfectly round, but the fact that that is such a sudden jump kind of makes me wonder if that could actually be more perceptible. You can kind of see it. Can you see it on the top there? Yeah, okay. All right, so that does make me curious if that could be contributing to that vibration we're feeling. So again, at some point, we are going to swap these tires side to side and see what difference that makes. I also wanted to show, though, the bearing play. So this side, you hear that? So these do have adjustable wheel bearings. It's your old school bearing. You can take it out, wash the bearings, grease them, and put it back together, get it adjusted tighter. So we are going to recommend doing that. Probably both sides just for general maintenance, but certainly adjusting this side tighter. That's just, we don't want to have play in the wheel bearing. That can cause it to wear out prematurely. And worst case, could have a failure. You could have tire wear issues if it got significant enough. So we want to address that before it happens. So that is another part of the RPA that we're looking at. Just checking your tires, checking your wheel bearings, checking your ball joints. Ball joints did actually look good on this. So, all right. And now let's move on back underneath the coach. All right. Now we do have our factory Motorcraft shocks on here. So, they're not great when they're brand new. And these have about 32,000 miles and 10 years on them. So they're getting a little bit tired. That is going to be a future video as well, where we're going to swap out these factory shocks for the Koni FSDs. We'll compare control as well as ride quality. Definitely, we felt some instances of driving it where there's just a little bit of harshness, kind of chatter that the shocks may be contributing to by not fully filtering out that just the frequency of our unsprung mass here. Also, we've got just the factory front bump stops. You can also do front Sumo springs on this to give you a bit more control in the compression of the front suspension. So stay tuned for that in a future video as well. Just be aware that if you do Sumo springs on any independent front suspension coach, these included, that may change your ride height, which will change your alignment. Just visualize, if this arm drops down, then the angle that tire is at is going to change. Your camber is going to change. So you may need to get the coach realigned if you do front Sumo springs. All right, so we'll go ahead. I guess one last thing I'll note is that on the topic of the shocks, these are probably some of the biggest pain of shocks to do, at least in terms of front shocks. A lot of times we'll actually cut the top of the factory shock out to get it out. The bottom is not a big problem, other than you just want to make sure that you don't over torque that. At the top, though, you got to get a ratchet in there and be prepared for some work by hand. So, all right, with that, we will make our way to the back of the coach. This is my first time really getting a super good look under the back of this. I did crawl around underneath it, but a little bit of surface rust on it. We'll probably need to do some paint to take care of that. I'm kind of wondering if this thing spent some time on the coast. All right, so in the back, you can see, just looking at this factory spring pack, this one actually isn't too bad in terms of reverse arch compared to some of them, because we do have an add-on airbag. It's got the Firestone ride airbags, which are helping a bit with our ride height, and I think providing some additional control as well. But you know, it is something you got to maintain. It's something that just, you know, something else to deal with versus more of a maintenance free. Like, ideally, we would like to see a spring pack that's better matched to the weight of the coach without having that reverse arch. Factory rear sway bar, again, relatively small. These bushings tend to get quite a bit of compression on them. It looks like it's holding in there okay, though. So again, future video, we're going to go to Roadmaster front and rear anti-sway bars, so give you some nice additional roll stability. Factory shocks back here. These ones are not too bad to access, actually. You've got the heat shield over there. It's a little bit more tricky. And our airbags on both sides there. So you can see our mounting bracket for the airbag, those bolts poking through there. Anytime we see airbags on a coach, we want to check and make sure that they're not leaking, make sure that the bracket is holding in there okay. You can see a little bit of a mark there where actually it did bottom out and hit the bracket at one point. It may have just been underinflated at the time. Looks like it hasn't happened too recently. You can see it up there. Now let's check that on this side too. Yeah, not seeing it as much here. Bolts are all there on the bracket. Almost looks like that bracket is starting to pull away on this side. Yep, that bracket is starting to fail. Again, like I was saying, airbags can be nice, but they're not exactly a worry-free solution. Right there, you can see there's just a little bit of a crack starting to develop in that bracket. That is something we're going to have to monitor. It looks like it's probably been that way for a while, but now that it's started, it's just going to continue to get worse. The more load is on it. Yeah, it's right in there. So, yeah, there you can see it pretty well. See that crack. So it's about, not quite an inch, maybe a little over a half inch up the bracket. So we will have to keep an eye on that. That's going to be an issue eventually. But that's why we bought this coach. We wanted to really learn about the limitations of this chassis in a lot more depth than we've been able to before, and really get it fine-tuned. You can actually see it just starting to happen on this side too. Right there, you can see that little crack starting to form right there. So there's a lot of stress right there where the bracket is bent. It's close to where it's bolted to the frame, and that's just slowly working at it. And once that crack starts, it's going to propagate through, and eventually that bracket's going to fail. All right, but that's why we do the RPA. That's why we do the inspection. We want to find these things and make you aware of it. And that is something that probably a lot of shops wouldn't have known to look for, because you really gotta look closely over these to really find that kind of thing. All right, and the last thing I want to talk about is the rear track bar, which this coach does not have one. That is something that controls that lateral movement in the rear axle. It really helps cut down on the tail wag, that oversteer, that push-pull from passing trucks. And the way that works is you've got one side that would go between your sway bar saddle bracket and the axle. Your rod would come across the back here, and then the other end clamps to the frame, so no drilling required. The things to be aware of on an E450 or E350 chassis, one is, does your coach have a factory rear sway bar, which this one does. Most any newer E450 is going to have a factory rear sway bar. And then you need to know, is it a V8 or is it a V10? If it's a V10 with a factory rear sway bar like this, it's going to need the SS450. That's what we'll be installing in yet another future video. If this were a V8, it would need the SS451. And if this coach did not have a factory rear sway bar, then it would need the SS402. So with that pretty much completes our RPA inspection of this coach. So we've gone front to rear. I didn't necessarily spend as much time on the driveline or exhaust components. I did really want to focus on suspension though. So hopefully this provides really any E450 owner a good overview of what to look for, knowing what are the limitations of the chassis, what are some things that you can upgrade. And it also gives us a nice foundation of where to start with this chassis. So again, please like and subscribe to stay in the loop on future videos so that you can see each step of the way. Next time, we're going to be addressing that steering pole, and it's either going to be with an alignment or with a tire swap, or most likely both. Either way, we're going to want to check the alignment. So be sure to tune in next time so that you can see what happens there. And until next time, I want to wish you safer and happier driving. Thank you.